Welcome to the RotoWire Fantasy Football Podcast, sponsored by Dabble, where you can win up to 5,000 times your money this football season. I'm Jim Coventry. Today's show will include giving my top reactions to a very memorable conference championship Sunday. We will have the New England Patriots and the Seattle Seahawks in Super Bowl 60. What an amazing time. Before we get into that, Dabble's not just another DFS app. It's the ultimate social platform where you can connect with other fantasy sports lovers. Dabble lets you win big. Win up to 5,000 times your money this football season. Starting with Dabble's easy. New users get $25 free when signing up. No deposit necessary. Check out the link below in the episode description to download Dabble now. All right. Instant reaction number one. Seahawks are headed to Super Bowl 60. The Seahawks 31, the Rams 27. This game met every expectation possible. Two great matchups during the season. This one was a 4-point game. We had a 2-point game, a 1-point game. The Rams won the first meeting, and the Seahawks won the last two, including the most important one that sent them to the Super Bowl. What a game. Now, early in this game, first drive, the Rams were making some mistakes. I'll just kind of go through the game. No safety help on Rashid Shaheed, 51-yard gain. I had talked about it in the pregame. I said the Seahawks need to get a deep shot or more to Rashid Shaheed. And then I also noticed in that first drive, and the Rams cleaned actually everything up later at like the second half, but Kenneth Walker, they were like not going for his legs to tackle him. He scored on an outside touchdown, and it was really like the Rams were looking horrible out the gate on defense, and Seattle looked great marching right down the field for that easy 7-0 lead. Now, Seattle offensively, they looked far more efficient than either of those regular season games against the Rams. If you remember the first game, the Rams were winning pretty comfortably, and the Seahawks scored some late points, missed a late field goal. The second game, they were losing 30-16 in the fourth quarter, but the Seattle offense looked like a machine early on. And like I said, it was really, really solid. Kenneth Walker, like I said, had a solid start to the game. He did fizzle down a bit late, but when it counted at the end of the game, he was helping them get some big first downs, so that was great. And then into the third drive, so Seattle gets an early lead in this one, but Seattle gets a holding penalty, and that really started to botch things down a little bit because, as we know, Seattle could have had like 3 straight scoring drives to start the game, and that holding call really kind of misfired. And those are always ill-timed. I'm no shade on them for doing that, but that's just kind of the way the game works, right? But at that point, the Seahawks were up 10-3 already. And so, again, giving the ball back to the Rams, it ends up working out, though, because the Rams issues in the red zone early in this game. They get big plays from Puka Nacua, Kyron Williams, Devontae Adams, but then two early drives, stall inside the 20. They kick 2 field goals early. And we talk about this all the time. You got to score touchdowns in these big games. Field goals don't cut it. And so when the Rams were down 10-6, yes, Seattle kicked a field goal, but the Rams had kicked 2 and not gotten a touchdown. That's going to hurt you later in that game. And it did hurt them, eventually down the road. All that said, the momentum starts to swing a little bit as the Rams are starting to get a little better on defense. Botch snap, Sam Darnold lose yardage, takes a sack. And so that was another drive, and it opened the door for the Rams. And when the Rams respond, Blake Corum. In the 2 matchups against Seattle, Blake Corum had not done well. Blake Corum had that really good 3-week stretch earlier in the season. The last month, Blake Corum has not been getting yards per carry on any decent level. He has been really scuffling, but he looked like he was shot out of a cannon in this game. He was explosive as a runner and a receiver, helped spark the offense. And then Matthew Stafford, when Seattle does a really nice job covering in the red zone, and they didn't cover the outlet to Kyron Williams. And more on that in the fourth quarter we get later. The Seahawks were dropping players back, and the Rams in the fourth quarter maybe should have learned from when they saw that, get the ball to an outlet, but they didn't. But in this case, early in the game, they do get Kyron Williams. They take a 13-10 lead in this one. So at this point now, it looks like momentum has swung a bit. But Getting near the half, the Rams get the ball and they have a chance to get an extension of their lead. They played pretty conservatively and they end up kicking it away very quickly. Well, guess what? Seattle didn't play conservatively, repeatedly finding Jackson Smith and Jigba on that last drive before the half, including a touchdown. And the Seahawks capitalize, go into the half with a 17-13 lead. Now, I will point out one thing I really liked about what the Rams did. All season, we talked about how the Rams' special teams were an issue. Very quietly, they hired a new coordinator for the special teams, and their special teams have been significantly better down the stretch. And I said going into this game, they cannot kick the ball to Rashid Shaheed. And I tell you what, they really followed that advice. They kicked the kickoffs through the end zone. The punts super high, the 2 punts, no chance to return. There was one kickoff that let Shaheed return, and he didn't get anywhere with it. So it was kind of like a well-placed kickoff. So that is one place I just want to point out the Rams, and there'll be a special teams blunder later. But for right now, they really did well with Rashid Shaheed as a kick returner. They eliminated him in that capacity, which really helped because that's a massive advantage that we would have had for the Seahawks above what they already had. Now, as we're getting back from halftime, and again, like I said, this game at the half is 17-13 in favor of Seattle. I'm thinking to myself, in the regular season, and when I previewed the game, I talked about this. I noted that the underneath passes were given to Seattle in the first two meetings. And look, the Rams won the first one, and the Rams botched the second one. They were up 30-16. They had no reason to change what they were doing. But early in the game, they changed that philosophy. They were playing closer to the line, and they were giving up big downfield plays. It was a terrible error. Now, they fixed it in the second half because I was wondering what they would do, and didn't really matter the Seahawks win, but I was really surprised that they came out with a game plan like that because it really didn't make a lot of sense. But like I said, good coaching. They did figure it out at halftime, which worked out for them for sure. But then here was the big deal. We get into the second half, like I'm saying, Sam Darnold, multiple downfield plays in that first half. He continued to punish the Rams when they went to the underneath approach. He was continuing to take what the defense was giving him. Beautiful game by Sam Darnold. Beautiful game. Understood what the defense was doing, took full advantage, made the most use of his receivers, and definitely the case there. Now, the Rams, special teams, and the Rams force a quick stop early in the second half. So the game's 17-13. They get the stop. They want to go ahead. And the punt goes to Xavier Smith. Don't know what happened. The young man trips. Ball hits him in the shoulder. Fumbles it. Gives the Seahawks the ball right around the 10-yard line. I said at that point, that probably cost the Rams their shot at the Super Bowl. And ultimately, it may have. I mean, there's all these plays in the game. You can always point to one play. But in that moment, with the momentum, the Rams had a chance to get that lead and play with an advantage in the second half. And the next play, Jake Bobo scores a touchdown. And now the game is completely flipped because the Seahawks have an 11-point lead. With that defense they have, you think that's great. Now, I want to point this out as well. You hear me talk about this all the time. Unless you're talking the 85 Bears, the 2000 Ravens, the Legion of Boom, if there is a very good best defense of the year on the field, and if they're playing an offense playing at a high level, I hate to use the word irrelevant, but the defense is irrelevant. The offense is going to score their points, and they're not going to have much problem. The Rams scored 27 points. And I knew they'd score a lot of points. My best bet of this game was the Rams over 22.5. And when we'll talk later, they had the ball down on the 4-yard line at the end of the game. And, as they didn't, we'll get to that later, but they didn't go for the field goal there. We'll talk about that later. The Rams had no issue moving the ball, especially in the second half. When they were down, it was pitch and catch. It was no problem. So that's just the point. And that's nothing on Seattle. It's just when good offense play good defenses, again, unless they're legendary, the result is always mostly the same. The offense does well. So anyway, 24-13 and the Rams really, really started waking up on offense. This is when they really rose from it. 4 plays, 75 yards. Matthew Stafford gets him outfield. A big pass to Parkinson. Perfect pass. 40-yard gain. Gets Adams for like a 29-yard gain down to the 1, and then gets Adams or inside the 5, and then gets Adams for a short touchdown. That quick. This game is 24-20. It was an amazing fast drives. But the Rams cut it to 4. They still can't get the stops, though. Rams, I said, they're giving the underneath throws now. Sam Darnold, 9 plays, 65 yards. Cooper Kupp gets in the end zone. 3rd touchdown of the year. That's all. But got in the big moment for them. And again, extending that lead back to 11. And that's just a massive lead to have. So at this point, we're looking 31-20. But as been the case, Rams get it back. Now the Rams, this was a drive. The Rams are going to stall out, and the game's probably going to be over. It's 3rd and 12, and Stafford, and they ran on 2nd and long, and I just didn't get that. I know you want to trick the team. Wow, they put themselves in a horrible 3rd down. And Stafford throws what looks to be an interception to Reek Woolen. Puka Nacua makes a great play to knock it out of his hands. Well, Reek Woolen doesn't always have the best reputation for being the headiest player in the league. And Reek Woolen decides to run over to the Rams sideline and show him up for screwing up and going to punt. Well, referee sees it. Oh, it's a 15-yard penalty. So the Rams get the ball. Very next play. Downfield pass, Puka Nacua, 34-yard touchdown, and there we have it. End of the 3rd quarter. This is about 2 minutes left, actually, in the 3rd, but the Rams are within 4 points again. We are set up for the 4th quarter of all 4th quarters. Hey, like I said, what a day. So 4th quarter comes around, and in the 4th quarter, the Rams get another stop. The Seattle team get over midfield. Again, they're just taking what the Rams give them. But a 9-yard sack of Sam Darnold. It was a great corner blitz, I believe, maybe a safety blitz. It was a great blitz. Darnold didn't read it. Tom Brady said he should have read it. Darnold gets sacked, and they punt away. And then the Rams have what could be a game-defining drive here. They have the ball on their own 10-yard line. About 12 minutes left in the game. And the Rams are showing that aggression. They are moving the ball down the field. And they get to the point where they're getting closer to field goal range. And they have a 3rd and 1. And I know when I previewed this game, I said, in the previous meetings, when the Rams had a 3rd and 1, 4th and 1, 4th and 2, all that, you can't run on Seattle. Brick wall, you're not getting it. I said, I hope Sean McVay learns. Well, he sure did. Play action, couple subs of a boot by Matthew Stafford. Perfect pass to Colby Parkinson, who drops it. It was a massive drop. They go for it on 4th down. And now Matthew Stafford is trapped. Defenses has everybody covered. Stafford has 2 pass rushers like closing in on him. Stafford somehow runs for the 1st down. If your heart's not coming out of your chest here, you are not enjoying NFL football. But as this play goes on, this drive goes on, the Rams get the ball down to the 4-yard line, and they have a 3rd and goal. Well, Seattle plays it smart. They drop the 4th down play, they drop 9 men into coverage. They are dropping everybody into coverage. And the 3rd down play. Now, look, Konata Mumfield's a nice player. I'm thinking to myself, man, I don't want to have the big play going to Konata Mumfield. It doesn't make the play. It gets broken up by the defender. I would have rather had Tyler Higbee, the tight end, someone out there that I trust a little bit more than Konata Mumfield. Now, it's nitpicking. I get it. But that was a 3rd down play. 4th down, Seattle drops 9 into coverage. Now, they could have got – I'm trying to think. I think they could have gotten a 1st down here. In recollection here, they could have gotten a 1st down. Early in the game, remember when I said they had the screen pass to the running back? And if they were coaching that up right, now they didn't know at the pre-snap, it looked like they were going to blitz everybody. They dropped that cover. So give the Seattle team great credit. Mike McDonald, beautiful call to speed things up. But if they had a running back leak out there, that probably does get them either the 1st down or the touchdown, but it doesn't. Stafford has to throw the ball into too tight of a window and no chance at all. Throws it toward Terrence Ferguson. So the Rams kill 7.5 minutes off the clock, 84-yard drive. Now, could they have kicked a field goal here? In theory, yes. But the way the game closed out, it didn't matter because the Rams never got the ball back. So in theory, yeah, you kick the field goal, and then if Seattle comes down and scores, you can score 8 and tie them. But there was only 4:50 left in the game, and so Seattle was able 3 consecutive first downs, 2 of them on third downs. Great. I mean, barely got a couple by an inch. It was perfect. Perfect. The Seattle, Kenneth Walker on a screen got over. Cooper Kupp was able to stretch the ball out. JSN easily got a first down a little later. And pretty much that was it. There was a defensive pass interference on the Rams, which helped us seal the game. But the Rams somehow get the ball about 20 seconds left. And I'm telling you, they were inches away from a Hail Mary with a chance. 2 passes to Nakua. One of them, Nakua, his knee went down just before getting out of bounds. Had he gotten out of bounds on that, I don't remember what the yard line was. It's probably 40-yard line. It would have been wild. Good call by the referee. It was the right call. He was down. It was over. But the Seattle Seahawks, what a game. I was never going to bet on Sam Darnold winning a big game, ever. Last week in San Francisco, they had nobody. Their defense was shredded. I'm like, there's no way Darnold's going to come through a game. Credit to Sam Darnold. Sam Darnold did not make any tragic mistakes in this game. Taking sacks, that is what it is. Every quarterback gets sacked. There were no bad interceptions. There were no catastrophic mistakes. It was an excellent game by Sam Darnold. Give him all the credit in the world. His offensive playmakers helped him. Jackson Smith and Jigba, awesome game as always. But this was a great effort. The Rams, wow. These two teams are champions. Unfortunately, the NFC teams can't play each other in the Super Bowl because they were the 2 best teams in the league. Now, we'll go to the Super Bowl later, but yes, in this case, 2 best teams in the league. We got the game we deserved. Either team could have won, and I wouldn't have been surprised. But again, you give all the credit in the world for the Seattle Seahawks making it to Super Bowl 60. All right, we're going to go over more of this week's reactions after we take a short break. All right, instant reaction number 2. The New England Patriots punched their ticket to Super Bowl 60. They beat the Denver Broncos 10-7. 10-7. What a wild game this was. So coming into this game early, I knew going in, and I said this, the Patriots are going to play a lot of man coverage. They got a couple big physical corners. You got Christian Gonzalez, you got Carlton Davis, Troy Franklin was out, Pat Bryant plays a lot of slot. But I said that Marvin Mims, but this is how I said it would happen. I said they need to go on an early down when New England's looking for the run, and they need to use play action. And that's when you take your shot to Marvin Mims. Nope. 3rd and 10. Sean Payton dials up the deep shot, and Mims and Jared Stidham connect on a 52-yard bomb, gets him right down inside the 10-yard line. Cortland Sutton, soon after, I don't remember, it was a play or two after, scores a touchdown, and Denver is up 7-0. Just wow. So, I mean, that quickly, Jared Stidham, as Alan Soslowski from RotoWire calls him, Jared Studham. I don't think he called him that at the end of the game, but at that point, it's kind of hard to argue with him. Now, the first half itself, Denver did control much of the first half. Denver was the better team. It was very hard for New England to move the football. New England was not able to run the ball with any consistent success. Passing yardage was not there. And Denver was getting enough first downs. They were better on offense. They were better on defense. And at one point early, I'm thinking to myself, the way this is going, can Denver pitch a shutout here? And honestly, they almost did. Defensively, that is. And then it happened. You know, well, first of all, I'm going to say this. Drake May was in too many obvious passing situations. And his wide receivers are very good, but they're not as talented as the Denver defensive backs. And that's when I began to think about a shutout. But that's what happens. The Broncos get the ball. Jared Stidham, it's a 3rd and 3. And you'd like to think, now remember, Sean Payton dialed that deep shot to Marvin Mims on a 3rd and 10 earlier. But you like to think 3rd and 3, you're up 7-0. You're going to let your defense play. They send Jared Stidham dropping back. and the pressure comes. And Jared Stidham freaks. Now, immediately, they want to call on the field an incomplete pass, a grounding. I'll call it grounding on him. And I'm thinking to myself, no way, that was backwards. And realistically, that was run into the end zone. Well, the referees figure it out and they're right. And I don't know why it wasn't a touchdown. It should have been a touchdown the entire way. It was a fumble, but it wasn't. And so anyway, we get the ball about the 12. New England gets the ball about the 12-yard line after the Stidham mistake. Well, it took 2 plays. And Drake May runs it in for a touchdown. So now we got 7-7. And this was the problem. Jared Stidham, look, 4 career starts, big game. You knew New England would throw some things at him that would confuse him at some point. He got the touchdown on the scripted first 15 plays from Sean Payton. So that didn't surprise me. That, Sean Payton was always going to have a good game plan. But after those first 15 plays, now things get a little sketchier as they do for most teams. And that said, that was just a catastrophic error that they couldn't afford. And so basically, we get New England goes into halftime tied. Will Lutz was lined up for a 54-yard field goal, and the weather was still okay. It was cold, but the snow wasn't an issue yet. And Lutz hits one wide from 54. Now, I didn't even talk about it in the story I wrote, but Andy Borregales went a few seconds later for a 63-yard field goal. I didn't expect he had a chance of making it, so didn't really talk much about it. But he also had a shot, but that was really, 5-10% chance maybe of him hitting that. I know it was Denver's error, but all that said, not so much. But yeah, that Lutz miss from 54, that was big. And because what we have here is now we got this 7-7 game, and that field goal, as you know later, could have meant everything. And then we come out for halftime, and the weather is beginning to be a factor. All of a sudden, the snow is starting to come down, and it kept intensifying throughout that. It never was like horrific, but you could see the field deteriorating with each passing drive. It was crazy. And, ball control, field position, quarterback mobility, these were things that were all going to come in the game. Now, realistically, what changed the game from 7-7 and allowed New England to win this thing? It was Drake May's legs. And I said this also in my pregame analysis. I said, if I'm coaching Denver, I'm playing man defense because I think my corners are better than your receivers, but I am putting a spy on Drake May. They didn't, and they paid. Drake May had almost 60 yards rushing. They were at the most opportune times. The 6-yard touchdown, even when the snow was starting, there was a third down, a 28-yard run on a 3rd and 9. That allowed the Patriots to hold the ball for 13 minutes in the third quarter. Denver had 4 offensive plays in that quarter. And then that field goal by Andy Borregales, 10-7 lead. Those were the last points you were going to see in this game because the weather got worse. Now, before we go on, I want to give Ramondre Stevenson a lot of credit. Yes, he was less than 3 yards a carry, 25 for 71. Travion Henderson, only 3 carries for 5 yards. But there were times it's sloppy. It's cold. Football's got to be wet. The defense is trying to rip the ball out of Stevenson's hands. And we know Stevenson has had fumble issues for much of his career, but he hasn't had in the last 2 months. And in this game, this would have been excusable almost. He would not let that ball come loose. I want to give Ramondre Stevenson a ton of credit for helping move the chains, grind the clock, and not fumble the ball. And then as the snow got heavier and it deteriorated further, New England went even heavier into man coverage. And I suggest that pregame, don't give Stidham easy zone windows to throw into. And as the game went late, New England leaned into that man coverage. And that was a big deal because it was very tough on that field with the wind to move the football. Now, a couple key missed opportunities. The Patriots late in the third missed a 46-yard field goal. Again, it was weather related. The Broncos lined up for a 45-yarder in the fourth quarter. Could have flipped the game, made it 10-10. Replay shows a little bit of a tip by the Denver lineman, and actually maybe that kick goes in but doesn't get blocked. So that was huge as well. But all that said, that was it. Critical field position. Otherwise, there was one point where before that missed field goal by the Broncos where Denver had their best chance. So New England had the ball, and on the first play, both Drake May slips going back to hand the ball to Stevenson. Stevenson slips, and all of a sudden they're inside their own 10, and then they shank the punt. and it ends up on the 33-yard line going in for the Broncos. If the Broncos could have done anything there, they could have won. They lost yards, and again, the tipped 45-yard field goal, and that was it. But I liked how New England late was disciplined. They played conservatively. They trusted its defense. They forced a decisive mistake. Jared Stidham throws a deep ball underthrown. Christian Gonzalez picks it off, and that ends up being the hammer. Patriots win this game with situational awareness, man coverage, clock control, ball security, a big play by the defense, a big goof by Jared Stidham with that backwards fumble, a goof meaning a goof play. And that was it. New England offensively scored one field goal in this game, and it ended up being enough. New England earns their spot in the Super Bowl. They definitely belong. I will tell you now, I don't know how that offense moves the ball against Seattle. I think they'll have a plan for Drake May running. I think the coverage is going to be very overwhelming. I don't think that offensive line for New England is going to be able to get much traction in the run game. I think that Seattle offensively, look, if Sam Darnold, I can't quantify Sam Darnold here. If now you give Vrabel and his staff 2 weeks, is it possible they can get Darnold to make mistakes? Possible. After today's game, I don't want to say that about Darnold right now because he came up big in the biggest moment. So there certainly is a path where New England's defense could create mistakes and keep this game low scoring and close. But as I'm thinking about my early analysis of this one, I am giving a big edge to the Seahawks, but there's a lot of time to analyze this one. All right, thanks to our sponsor, Dabble, where you can win up to 5,000 times your money this season. And thanks, everyone, for listening. Come back next week for another edition of the RotoWire Fantasy Football Podcast.